We all remember that moment in The Return of the King when Frodo stands on the slopes of Mount Doom, trembling, exhausted, barely able to stand. And suddenly, at the very end, Sauron becomes aware of him, truly aware. Only at that moment does the Dark Lord fully realize where the ring is and who carries it. But that leads to a question fans still ask. Why couldn't Sauron sense Frodo earlier? Why only at Mount Doom? Today we're going to unravel this mystery, and the answer takes us deep into Tolkien's understanding of power, perception, and evil itself. The first thing we need to clear up is this. Sauron was powerful, ancient, cunning, yes, but he was not all-seeing. Tolkien makes this absolutely clear. The so-called Eye of Sauron is not literal omniscience. It represents his will, his focus, his relentless search, but it does not mean he can magically detect the ring anywhere in Middle-earth. Evil in Tolkien's world is not all-knowing. In fact, it's often blind to the things that matter most. Sauron can sense the ring under certain conditions, but only if someone actively uses it. When a person puts on the ring, their presence shifts partially into the unseen realm. That's why the Nazgul can immediately perceive the wearer. But Sauron himself, weakened without the ring, cannot simply track it. He becomes aware when its power is invoked, when someone tries to use it as he used it. And Frodo almost never does that, and this is key. Frodo barely uses the ring throughout the entire journey. At Weathertop, he puts it on, yes, but Sauron does not see him. Only the Nazgul do. And at Amonhen, Frodo puts on the ring again, and Sauron almost discovers him. Tolkien writes that the Eye was searching for him, closing in until Frodo tears the ring off. These moments reveal the pattern. Sauron doesn't sense the ring unless the ring-bearer draws attention to himself. One of the biggest reasons Sauron cannot detect Frodo is surprisingly simple. He never imagines the ring would be destroyed. Tolkien explicitly states this. Sauron could not conceive of anyone willingly destroying such power. In his mind, the ring would eventually be used against him. So he looks not toward Mount Doom, but toward Gondor, Rohan, Isengard, places of strength and ambition. His own evil blinds him to the possibility of self-sacrifice. When Aragorn reveals himself in the Palantir, claiming his lineage and showing Andúril, Sauron panics. Tolkien explains that the Dark Lord becomes convinced Aragorn has the ring or will soon claim it. That single moment misleads Sauron more than anything else. He believes a king, a mighty lord, will wield the ring, never a hobbit. This false assumption creates a massive blind spot. And then there's the war, the assault on Minas Tirith, the march of armies, the fear of an unknown ring lord rising against him. These occupy nearly all of Sauron's attention. Tolkien writes that Sauron's eye is fixed on the captains of the West. His gaze is turned outward, not downward, at two exhausted hobbits crawling through the wastelands of Mordor. Frodo and Sam also receive cloaks from Lórien, gifts that blend them into stone, shadow, and earth. These cloaks don't make them invisible, but Tolkien describes them as confusing the sight of enemies, making the wearer seem like part of the land. Against a mind already looking in the wrong direction, this subtle elven magic only deepens Sauron's blindness. Mordor is vast, broken, volcanic, filled with fumes, shadows, and countless places to hide. Tolkien describes the land as ruinous and chaotic, not an open plain where Sauron can simply scan for intruders. The land itself swallows noise and movement, and Frodo and Sam, worn down to almost nothing, move like shadows among shadows. One of the biggest misconceptions is that the ring broadcasts its location. It doesn't. The ring has a will of its own, it tempts, it corrupts, but it does not shine like a beacon to Sauron. The only time it truly calls out is when someone tries to use it as a tool of domination. Frodo never does that, not until the very end. As Frodo approaches Mordor, He becomes physically and spiritually weaker. His steps fade. His will falters. His presence almost dissolves into the land. Tolkien often describes him as fading, not unlike the ring wraiths, but in a gentler way. The weaker he becomes, the less noticeable he is. His mind isn't projecting outward, it's collapsing inward. Samwise also becomes a shield, both physically and spiritually. He carries Frodo, protects him, and even holds the ring for a short time. And Tolkien is clear. Sam is astonishingly resistant to corruption. His simple-hearted loyalty acts as a buffer. There is no moment when Sam attempts to use the ring's power. So Sauron senses nothing. The Nazgul, however, do come close. They patrol the skies. They sense the ring's presence more keenly than Sauron himself. As Frodo nears the mountain, Tolkien describes the Witch King perceiving something, an awareness, a pull, but he still cannot pinpoint the bearer. Why? Because Frodo refuses to put on the ring. He resists until the breaking point. When Frodo reaches the crack of doom, everything changes. This is the place where the ring was made. Here, its power is strongest, and so is its connection to Sauron. Just being near Mount Doom amplifies the ring's presence. It becomes harder to resist, harder to hide. Frodo is standing inside Sauron's spiritual domain. And then, Frodo breaks. After resisting for so long, he gives in at the very edge. He claims the ring. He stops hiding. He speaks the words that reveal everything. "I will not do this deed. The ring is mine." In that instant, Frodo is no longer a shadow. He is a blazing signal, and instantly, Sauron knows. Tolkien describes the eye snapping toward Mount Doom, realizing at last what has happened. Not because Frodo was near him, not because Sauron tracked him, but because Frodo used the ring's ultimate authority. He claimed it. That act cuts through every distraction, every assumption, every blind spot. Sauron panics. In that exact moment, he sees everything he missed. His enemies distracted him. His expectations blinded him. His arrogance misled him. And now, the unthinkable is happening inside the one place he never thought to guard. A hobbit stands claiming his ring inside the fires of its birth. This moment on Mount Doom is the only time Frodo truly becomes visible to Sauron. Not physically, spiritually. The claiming of the ring elevates Frodo into the same realm of perception Sauron is desperately scanning. And that's why the crisis erupts instantly. Sauron finally sees, because Frodo finally shines. The great irony is this. Sauron's downfall comes from something he could never understand: self-sacrifice. He expects power. He expects domination. He expects someone mighty to challenge him with the ring. But he never expects a hobbit, starving and half dead, to walk quietly into his stronghold and destroy everything he built. So, why couldn't Sauron sense Frodo until Mount Doom? Because Frodo never revealed himself. Because the ring was silent. Because the Dark Lord's arrogance blinded him. And because the only moment Frodo truly stepped into Sauron's sight was the moment he finally claimed the ring. In the end, Middle-earth was saved not by strength, but by humility, and by the one strategy Sauron never saw coming: